Right, good morning all. Today we're going to be doing discs and pads on a Vauxhall Vivaro, and I'm going to show you the proper way to do it. Here's the kit we got, all right? Rear discs, rear pads, front discs, front pads. Now these cost a fortune, and I'll show you why. Because they come with the rear bearing ready installed, look at that, and the ABS ring, and they weigh an absolute ton. Jacked it up, axle stands, all the rest. So first thing to do, little hole there, get an appropriate screwdriver behind, and that just pops off, right? Wheel nuts, I believe, to be 19 mil. Yeah, okay. But these are the wobble head wheel nuts, look. They're essential for Vauxhall Vivaro. You've got to have them for this type of wheel. And don't forget, what you want to do, hit subscribe when you're watching this. It costs you nothing. Next step, you want to get this cap off. So I've got, we call it a bodgy screwdriver. It's turned into more of a chisel over the years, right? So we get that in the gap down there. I've already loosened it a little bit. And give it a little tap and that'll come off, look. No fixings, just a flat piece of metal. And there is our hub nut, which looks like a 32 mil, but I'm not sure, so we'll try that in a bit. Then you want to take the, how well you can see that, there you go, that's better. The brake caliper backing bolts off there and there, right? They appear to be a 13, look. So let's try this. Okay, so quite often you can't get this off. The first thing to do is to make sure you've taken the handbrake off, which I have, because obviously that'll hold it tight. Next thing, get your screwdriver again into the top. There we go, it's coming. It's tight. I'm going to have to rewind these pistons, I think, to get that all back in. Anyway, I'm going to wiggle that off and come back to you. Right, back at the next stage. So, obviously we're taking this whole scenario off. The one in the middle, bugger off, wasp. So bugger off, you're not welcome here. Okay, this big boy in the middle here, I've just cracked, is a 35 mil, right? And I've got an inch bar to do it. This is the kind of thing you might have to borrow or just get specifically for this. I wouldn't get a whole set if it's just what you're doing, but yeah, 35 mil fits on there. Bloody perfect. Oh, that's nice. And it's tighter than you would think. So I've got a nice big bar to assist my inch bar. I've just loosened it, right? So, so I've cracked that. And I might have to take, you see this brake hanger out of the way. So the bolts on the back of that are 21 mil. I've got a spanner on it. I can use a spanner and a hammer technique and try and whack that down, take those off, get them out of the way. Not sure, it might come without it, but I'm going to take it off anyway, so that at least you guys will know when it's done. Okay, she's off. Yeah, pretty as we suspected. Oh, those discs are shagged, aren't they? Look at that, nothing left on them. ABS ring over on the back, as we said. Okay, it's at this point you're going to want to check the sliders, right? They want to be moving free as a bird inside it. So I think someone's made their own on this side, but seems to be free. If they're seized at all, it's going to affect your braking hard. So pull them all out, clean them all up, and put some grease on them anyway, because we go above and beyond here. This is what we're left with. See, that's actually, it's all right. It's not that rusty. It's just a bit of rusty oil on there. But I think this thing, you'll see there's a little bit of magnety stuff stuck to it. That's the ABS sensor. It really could be cleaner than that. So again, above and beyond, I'm going to give this a nice clean up now before I put the new part on, just to make sure we've got the best chance of it all working proper. I'm worried about these pistons. I should maybe have changed the calipers as well now that I've gone this far, but they're expensive, so I'll try and wind them back and we'll see how we go. Obviously, if you're not familiar with how to wind them back, check my other video on how to fix your rear brakes. While you're here, always pays to have a good inspection. The brake lines look okay, brake ferrules look all right. Let's have a look round. There's a little bit of surface rust creeping in, but doesn't look too bad. In fact, it looks a really nice condition, this one. Tell you what, But yeah, anyway, just keep an eye out. The good mechanic works with his eyes. So I'm going to clean all this crud off here. See, there's mud and God knows what else on there. So get all that clean, make sure these slides are free, get the new handbrake cable, and then I'm going to start refitting. But yeah, refitting is pretty much, they say in the Haynes, refitting is reverse of removal, which kind of is. Just get the new thing, make sure it's nice and greased up on the shaft here. Don't want none of this on the shaft. This is going to be spotless. Clean all that back up, slide it back on and refit it, tighten them up. Make sure you pay attention to the tightening torque of this, which I'm going to look up in a bit when I get to refitting it. I'll tell you what it is anyway. Right, back at it. We've cleaned that up a bunch. You see the ABS sensor's all nice and clean. This has seen better days, but I'll advise them to change that. We've wound the piston back in on this. Nice. So that's all ready to go. I've greased the central shaft and I've WD'd it. I'm about to put my new bit on. The tightening torque for it is 280 Newton meters, and that's enormous. So we're going to get that on, they get a massive bar, and we're going to tighten it up on the torque wrench to 280 at least, might go a little bit more. So you've got my new handbrake cables ready to install. Yep, that goes in afterwards. So I'm going to disc and bearing on first, tighten that up. Then I'm going to put the hanger on for the brakes. And then I'm going to put the caliper pads, everything all back together, tighten all back up nicely, and that should be one side done. And then I'll show you how to do the fronts in a minute. There you go. There you go, all back together, done up to 290 Newton meters. And I gave that a little tap just over on one corner just to hold it in place because it's got no locking mechanism. New pads, new handbrake cable. One thing that vexed me was that, the bloody brake line. But I tried it every single different way, and that is the best way I could get it to go. The only thing I could think of is whoever's done this has used a right-hand brake line rather than a left-hand brake line, but I'll get that remedied as soon as we can. But yeah, aside from that, beautiful. Couple of oily fingerprints, get them off with a rag, reline the rest of the handbrake up, and that is this side complete. Only took me 14 hours, so happy days. On to the front now. This is what it looks like. I've taken the wheel off, again 19 mils for the wheel nuts, axle stand, jack, and I've chopped the rear wheels. What we are looking at here, okay, so first off, we're going to take the caliper off. So that means these two caliper bolts at the back here, right? They appear to be 12 millimeter. So I'm going to take them off. What I like to do, I like to get a nice sturdy piece of wire, right? Hook it over the suspension arm there, and then tie the caliper up with it so it's about there. So that way we don't cause any unnecessary friction or tension on the actual rubber brake line itself, because you can't have it hanging on that. Then we're going to take the caliper bracket off, which would be big bolts at the back there, 17s I think. I'll double check and I'll let you know. Whip all that off, make sure the sliders are free as a bird, as we discussed last time. Then before pushing the piston back into the caliper, it is imperative that you take the lid off the brake fluid reservoir, because otherwise, if you push this and the pressure's got nowhere to go, you can fry your master cylinder and end up costing you loads more money. Right, so these couple of 12 mils now, then I'm going to hang the caliper off there, inspect it for damage. Yeah, so they were indeed 12, so we took them off. See, the sliders, they move lovely, happy days. I'll chuck a little bit of grease on them anyway, just to be sure. The pads, however, don't move in the slightest, right? So they've rusted themselves in. With the new pads, I'm going to be sure to put some nice bit of grease on there, maybe even touch them with a file. New pads can quite often come with paint that's too thick on the top, and people just jam them in there, but it's supposed to be free moving, you know, supposed to get the best brake possible. And even with the pads on, I can't turn the bloody disc at all. So they have sea salt on there. That's something that's not supposed to happen. We'll address that before we get onto it. Then they actually look really nice. If you have a little look under the rubbers here, clean pistons, they look new. So I'll chuck a little bit of lubricant on them and squeeze them back in. This caliper hanger bracket at the back here, that looks like an 18 mil actually, not a 17. So yeah, okay, so we got them off. They were 18 and they were tough as anything. This is a T40 Torx bit, and there's a lot of ways to get them off. This is my preferred method, an impact tool. It's brilliant. My mate gave it to me and it's changed my life. Okay, so this is how I've pushed the calipers back in. You see that there? I've got my clamp on the back there. I put some nice lubricant underneath the rubbers just to get it to slide back in. I put one of the old pads on and I just squeezed it, making sure that the cap of the reservoir is off, because obviously there's quite a lot of fluid in here and it's got to have somewhere to go. So that's all gone back up the pipe and into the reservoir now. This is now just at its... This is now just recessed till it's flush, pushed back in about that much. See, the rubbers are nice and flat. Because I've got new discs and new pads, I'm going to need all of the clearance I can get. I've cleaned this up, put some fresh grease in the sliders for him. We're going to bolt that back on now. We're going to put a little bit of copper grease on where the pads mount here. It doesn't look in great condition, this, does it? But, so that slides. Make sure the pads are all moving nicely. Give it a quick wipe down, put it back together, and hopefully we're done. That is how you do the front set. See, I put the little grub screw back in. That does not need to be super, super tight. That does not hold your brakes on. These do, your wheel bolts, look. So people always over tighten that and then they snap off when they come out, but you don't need to. It's just a locator lug. You imagine that when you tighten your wheel bolts up, it pinches all of this together so it will not move. That's where real strength comes from. Don't need to mess with any of this. Once I've done that, I'm going to give it a nice bleed. And the way to do that is you find caliper brake reservoir, which is there, and your brake master cylinder is on the passenger side, because obviously they're meant for it to be European. And then you bleed the furthest away wheel first, and then work your way back from there. So I'm going to start with the rear drivers here, rear passengers, front drivers, then front passengers. And put some nice fresh fluid in it and all the brakes should be perfect then. And we'll take it for a test drive, make sure nothing feels funny, and then yeah, hopefully happy days, finished.